Hey, Emmett. Oh, good. Sorry, it was terrible construction. I'm coming home, getting my kids from school. I'm in now. Cool. Okay. Oh, nice. Cool. Should I open it? Hey everyone, it's Barb Egan with Therapy Talks and Switch Research. Thank you for joining our YouTube Live today on Monday, May 16th. It's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and I'm so excited that you started your Monday focusing on your mental health. So thank you for joining us. I'm really excited. On today's show, we're going to talk a lot about self-judgment and common humanity. And that sounds pretty good, but what does that really mean? So we had so much fun last week. I loved coming on and talking with you. That was my first time. So thank you for your graciousness and kindness. And I'm so excited to do this on Mondays with you. And so today, when we're talking about the day 10 from our self-love journal, we're going to use some prompts from there and we're going to use some real life examples. So please feel free to type in the chat box and interact. And it should be really fun because we're going to do it together. Because again, it's common humanity. And this is something that we can all identify with because we all struggle with self-judgment. And last time we talked a lot about those self-critical thoughts, the shoulds. Don't should on yourself. That's usually a good rule of thumb. Don't should on yourself or anybody else. And just paying attention to our language. Always, never, everybody, always. And how we can combat that, thinking of a friend, what would you say to that person, or someone who really cares about you, who has your best interests at mind, like visualize their face, their tone. What would they say to you? And so today we're going to talk about, what is common humanity? Well, first off the bat, we're humans and we all have stuff. And in my opinion, as a counselor, is that we can all benefit from counseling at some point in our life. We don't always have to be in counseling, but I think we do always have to care for our mental health, just like we care for our physical health. You would never wait until the last minute, until you broke every bone in your body to show up at the doctor's office or the hospital. So we shouldn't wait till we have a breakdown or we're at the end of our rope to access counseling. Although those are great times to do it, we don't have to wait till we break down. We can be preventative. And often, prevention is the best treatment plan. That's what I think. And I speak from personal experience. So today on Common Humanity, I want to share a lot of my personal stories because I resonate with this. Like I shared last time, I use a lot of shoulds. Everybody, nobody, always, never. And if I do it, and I'm a therapist, like professionally, I know this stuff, but it's a whole other thing to know it up here in your head and then connect it to your heart or your real life experience. It's just a lot of repetition. So I just want to encourage you, don't worry. You don't have to get it overnight. And again, remember last time we talked about neuroplasticity, or how the brain's like a muscle, is that even if I've been this way up until now, I don't have to be this way forever. And the brain is like a muscle, but that does take some time and some discomfort, those growing pains, to really work through it. And again, to overcome self-judgment or this negative self-talk. It's kind of counterintuitive, but we want to find this common humanity, which can then lead to self-compassion, that we all struggle with this. And so I'm going to give an example, and I would love to hear in the chat box, feel free to share your real life experiences as of late or just throughout your life, of when has a time come when you judged yourself, when you talked critically to yourself, the negative self-talk came up in your head. And so I'd love to hear some of your experiences, if you could share like the situation. And as you're doing it, I'm just going to paint a picture, and then we can go back to some of these. And I bet just by reading them out, we'll see, hey, oh, I felt that way this time. Oh, I felt the way this time. Oh, I felt this way this time. And I'm going to give a real life example, a kind of everyday one, so that maybe you could resonate, that they're not going to be these huge, massive ones. It's not going to be the ER type, I'm going to break every bone in my body and then get help kind of example. So let's say, you're outside, it's beautiful spring day. And you see an acquaintance, like not a best friend, not that person you'd visualize saying nice things to you, but just an acquaintance, someone, walking down the street, and you pass them, you make eye contact, and you say hi. And they don't say anything back to you. So most of us in that situation would probably go to the negativity bias, meaning we're going to have a negative self-talk or a self-judgmental talk. So that could sound like, oh, I look like such an idiot. Oh, I look so dumb. I'm such a loser. They must not like me. Wow, I wonder why they didn't say hi. I don't think I'll ever say hi to anybody again. That was so embarrassing. I look like such a fool. Has anyone been there or thought those types of things? Well, the reality of it is, none of those things that you just said about yourself are 100% true, just based on someone else's actions. They don't determine your worth. In fact, maybe that person didn't really connect the dots who you were. Maybe they didn't recognize you. Maybe even though they looked at you, they had so much else on their mind. They just got fired. They just found out their grandmother died. They just heard the worst diagnosis from the doctor. And so they saw you, but they weren't really there to say anything. And even if they saw you and you said hi and they didn't say anything back to you, that says more about them than it does you. But isn't that amazing, though, that most of us in that example would probably jump to judging ourselves rather than the other person? And that's a theme of common humanity, is that we all have these negative self-talk. We all have this negativity bias, that we could walk into a room and replay all the things we didn't say correctly, or what we should have done differently, or wondering what another person is thinking about us. I think we've all been there. And I love in what some of our listeners are saying. So it's hard to find the line between judging yourself for self-improvement and when it's counterproductive. Ooh, that's a good one. I'd love to hear some more thoughts on that, of how do you know when it's kind of like that, hey, you got to do this. It's not maybe too negative, but it's to improve yourself. This is a very old school type mentality, which I was an elite athlete. I was a professional coach as well. I come from a professional athlete family. So that kind of hard love, or, it's not very touchy-feely by any means. And so that kind of self-improvement, productivity, performance, kind of all of that does motivate you to some extent. To some extent is the key. And so it is a hard line of judging yourself for self-improvement or when it's not productive. So maybe, thinking back to when you had a teacher like that, or a parent or a coach, that can be really difficult to kind of separate, they're coaching me or they're criticizing me. And those are good distinctive words. And I use them really purposefully there. We can coach ourselves. We don't necessarily have to criticize or condemn ourselves. But for most of us, again, that negativity bias, we go that way. So it does take a lot of work and a lot of effort to switch that critical voice to a more common humanity type voice of, you can still be productive. You can still get to the top of your game and performance without the self-judgment. And we kind of go back on that. Even as I say that, I'm like, oh, no, we can't. Or no, our culture tells us we can't, or you have to, especially as a coach. And I coach professionally, and I work with professional athletes and high business CEOs and things like that, even in my clinical practice. And so let me encourage you, all of our performance research of psychology, we cannot shame someone into performing better, whether we're parenting a child or a professional athlete or a business CEO or ourselves. We cannot shame ourselves into doing better. Oftentimes we have to be validated. As humans, we long to be seen and felt and heard and valued. And when we feel that way, somebody's coaching then leads to improvement. Their criticism at that strategically wrong time can be detrimental to self-esteem. So I want to just say, I'm sorry if you've ever experienced that, just that cutting word that you could get 10 reviews, like let's say for Amazon, you get 10 reviews, 9 are great. 1 is negative, but we replay that negative one over and over and over in our minds. And that's because judgmental talk or negative self-talk actually sticks in our brain more like Velcro. So Velcro is not permanent. That's the good news, but it is strong and it's hard to get out and it takes effort and we got to. And positive thoughts are more like Teflon or the nonstick frying pan. So they don't always stick right away. They kind of oil and water. But if we think on them for 20-ish seconds or more, we start to believe them. We have repetition. We have people in our social support that we really believe them. We trust them. They don't just tell us we're all rainbows and butterflies, but they have a very accurate, trustworthy picture of us and they speak into that. We can borrow their voice. We can collect evidence that we are enough, and we can kind of bring that common humanity back against the judgmental self-talk. So I just want to encourage you of that, of if you've grown up in an environment or you work in an environment or you're in that environment of self-judgmental or other judgmental, any type of judgmental or critical self-talk for the basis of performance, our research definitely shows us that that doesn't work as well. I mean, you can fear someone into behaving, but they're operating out of anxiety, and there's only a threshold for that until it doesn't work anymore. But if we can help someone feel validated, even ourselves, if we feel validated, so maybe that looks like good social support, self-care, exercise, eating well, taking care of your body physically through massage, mentally through counseling, just these healthy, holistic approach, you're going to be able to handle stressors. You're going to be able to identify judgmental talk, whether it's internal from yourself or external from that type of environment. You're going to be able to make it more balanced, like that street example of kind of, instead of just going, oh, that person doesn't like me or I offended them, to, okay, well, even if they didn't say hi to me, so what? It's not going to ruin my day. I'm going to keep saying hi to people that I see because it makes me feel good. And it makes them feel good and seen too. And I know as humans, this common humanity theme, we all want to be seen. And it's better to try and be on that error on that side of caution than not. Because even if, again, another experiment like that, if you just walked by people on the street and didn't say hi, I bet you would feel more anxious and actually worse than if you did say hi and they smiled back, because that positive reward does a lot. It's, again, it connects us. Again, it's feeling common humanity. So I love to hear some of this. Shame is a lot to put on a child. That's horrible. I know. And oftentimes this is a big emotion that we see with judgment, is not just that I did bad, which is guilt. I did something bad. I lied. I stole something, but I am a liar. I am a thief. I am bad. And that's a big one. That's how we separate guilt and shame, but they're very like this terrible dragon of shame and judgment. But again, we all experience it as humans. Like these are emotions we all feel. And the feeling wheel, if you Google it, it's a great image to kind of show what all humans feel to some extent. We all have these common core emotions and they kind of branch out to kind of see what different words sit with you better. So I would encourage that as a resource too, the feeling wheel. It's a great resource to kind of decipher what are you feeling exactly. That can be really, really helpful. So how can we stop the flood of negative thoughts when we don't live up to our own expectations in the moment when we have to go on? For example, while speaking or competing or performing, how do we stop the flood of negative thoughts? So oftentimes you nailed it. You said when we don't live up to our own expectations. So here's a good example of expectations of up here. So unmet expectations, reality. And this chasm is disappointment, it's resentment, it's frustration, it's shame, it's judgment, it's all that stuff. So I think if we pull back and take a look, are these realistic expectations? Would I put them on most people? Or do I just put them on myself? If I have this perfectionistic type tendency, I can let it go for my friend, but not for me. I should be up here. And so having, again, a balanced voice speak into that to bring that common humanity that you don't always have to be perfect or up here really, really is beneficial. Now, oftentimes we do need someone else to help us gain that more balanced voice, not just ourselves. I love Dr. Neff's work in self-compassion. That's a fantastic resource, workbooks, website, all of that really good stuff that we can do that individual work. Counseling can be that great individual work, but you're also borrowing a more balanced perspective, more specialist trained from that therapist, tools of how to shift that. But it can also be found in friends and family, safe friends and family that are not going to keep reinforcing judgmental talk, but to help you see that we are all human, that we can give ourselves some self-compassion, that you are worthy of love and validate that. So I think when you're in that moment, it feels so real. You're flooded with those negative emotions. You're flooded with the negative self-talk. Your body's probably feeling it. So even just starting there, where in my body do I feel it? Connecting the mind and body, because if you try to go right to the thoughts, oftentimes we can't, we're too flooded. You can say the best, most rational thing ever, and your brain just won't register it because you're too flooded with negative emotions. So calming yourself down. One, that's showing that you're worthy of care, of taking some time, of calming down the nervous system, doing some grounding techniques or breathing, utilizing apps like Calm or Happify, Mind Shift. Those types of things are really beneficial. And then going from there, maybe you do phone a friend, kind of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Call someone that you can go back to that more balanced way of thinking, especially when it comes back to performance or productivity. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a colleague, a teammate, a spouse, someone who, again, has your best interest at heart, but can help you really take an honest look if those expectations are real or not, or unrealistic, because that's often where we first have to start to move away. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll try to get it. Hold on. Sorry. Do you want me to unplug and plug again? Okay. Oh, no problem. All right. I would love to hear from you guys too. how do you stop the flood of negative thoughts when you're in the moment? Maybe you're speaking up at a work meeting, or you're competing, or you're performing. I'd love to hear from you too. How do you stop that? Another question comes in of, what if the expectations are reasonable, such as a very easy task, such as exercise that I'm not doing? That's a great one. An exercise, or waking up early, or journaling. Again, all these good things often become those big stressors. It's like the pebble that when you're hiking just eats away at your foot. And, it's not a huge boulder, it's a pebble, but it really messes up your hike. That's the same thing. So we know that as humans, we do really well with routine and habits. And so if we can instill a habit or a routine, that will really help. Again, common humanity, we have to find some themes here of what we do well, and generally speaking, and then you're so unique and personalized. So this is where working with a coach or a counselor or friends or family can be really, really impactful, because it's tailored, it's personal to you. But let's say for exercise, because that's a big one. People know that it's a good thing, they should do it, but it's not working, or they're having a hard time fitting it in. Oftentimes I like to work backwards. So let's say you look at your schedule, and we first have to fit it in like we would an appointment. We have to take ownership or power over it. And so if we see, oh, really, I'm so busy, I can only really work out at 6 a.m. in the morning, but I'm so tired, knowing that you're probably not going to want to get up the first couple times. Starting is going to be the hardest. Day 2 is going to get a little bit easier. Day 3 is going to get a little bit more easy, and it will progressively get easier once we build it into a routine and a habit. But it's going to take some time. And I think when we make those routines or commitments or habits, or those shoulds, those expectations on ourselves, we do that with no real experience of the positive reward yet. Once we do it and we experience the endorphins and the positive reward and the increased self-esteem, but it's an act of self-care that, okay, I really deserve this. My body deserves this. It's good for me. Then it's easier to get up earlier or stick to that once we experience the positive reward of it, whether that's exercise or eating well. And so I would encourage an accountability partner, whether that's, a spouse or a friend, or someone that usually works really well, who's not going to judge you and put that judgment on that we often put on ourselves, but that encourages you and say, okay, let's do it together. That's going to be huge. Again, common humanity, coming together, working for the good of each other. That could be really big. And know that it's a quote unquote easy task. I would say it's simple, but it's not easy, because in theory, it's simple. In practicality, it can be really hard to wake up at 6. So then we have to work backwards and say, what time do I have to go to bed? I want to have a good night's sleep. It's going to take me some time to get used to it. That's okay. I'm human. I'm going to give myself a week, and it's going to be really hard, but I'm going to treat myself throughout the day, or encourage myself. I'm going to put sticky notes of positive, quotes or mantras, check in with a friend to encourage me, those sort of things. Like, really build yourself up in those time periods until you reap the positive rewards a little bit to keep going. Let's see, what's another, a good one. So keep a list of successes at my fingertips, including times I've come through tough times. Lexi, that is so good. I love that suggestion of how that can help stop the self-judgment, or remind you of just for yourself, even that common humanity of when, okay, I can do this. If I've done it before, I can do it again. And this is an exercise I give to almost all my clients if you like to journal, old fashioned type of paper and pen, or put it in your phone so it's always accessible. If you do journal, take a picture of it so that you don't have to, hold your journal around everywhere you go. But if it's on your phone, even in the picture form, you can go back, because you want to remember in the darkness what you learned in the light. So remember in the times of self-judgment, what you learned in the light when you felt seen, or you felt that common humanity or that self-compassion piece. Remember in the darkness what you learned in the light. And maybe that's somebody else's words over you too, of strength and positivity, and said, you can do this. Remember these other 2 times. And they don't have to be a whole exhaustive list, like a Sports Center top 10 highlight reel, although it could be 1 or 2 specific times. When they're specific, they're more likely to ingrain in our brain, again, kind of back to Velcro, And we can start to think that way with ourselves. We get compassion on ourselves and then more towards other people too. And likewise, if we show compassion to someone else, it actually is a good practice to then practice it towards ourselves. It's that connection of humanity there too. And sometimes it is easier to start with someone else than ourselves. That's a great one. Keeping that list of your past successes. Very good. Yeah. And once you're in the habit of exercise or eating well, it's so much easier to continue. But as soon as you fall off, it is hard to get back. So I'd love to hear from you all. What do you do to get back on track? Let's say exercise or journaling or eating well. What helps you get back on track? Does judging yourself and being really harsh and critical help? I'm sure we've all done it. I'm sure we will do it again. But what helps you get back on track? Because this is kind of the magic of hearing the tried and true of real life examples of what people associate with and resonate with. What would I say to my friend if they called me and shared my thought with me? Oh, Sophie, that's a good one. So if your friend, again, think of someone specific, like my friend Rachel, and I can see her face and I can hear her tone of voice and see how she treats me. I think of the past ways that she's treated me, past successes, so to speak. Has she ever talked that way to myself, to me, how I talk to myself? Oof, no. Would I ever say those things to her the way I say them to myself? And like really calm down, let that nervous system calm, see it in your mind. Oh no. And I bet you can almost feel it in your body too. If you were to say that to someone you really cared about, if you kind of paused a little bit and felt it in your body, and oh, no, I would not. It's like almost cringeworthy. And so that's another good reminder sometimes to shock the system out. Yeah, the shame. Yeah, Lisa says it doesn't help to shame yourself to get back on the wagon if you fall off, so to speak, of exercise or eating well. Let's see, another one says it helps to line up some kind of reward from completing the task, like breakfast after a morning walk. Yes, that is such a great point. And so, productivity or performance coaches, anything sports psychology related, we see this all the time. As humans, we do really well with positive rewards. Again, that's why I said before, when you're kind of in that habit, you get the positive rewards of endorphins and feeling good about yourself and just that runner's high type feeling after exercise. So it's easier to keep going because your brain can latch onto that. It's a specific of, oh, I did that hard work. I feel accomplished and oh, I got that positive. But if we haven't had that yet and we're just thinking in our mind, oh, I should do this. Oh, I should wake up 6 a.m. and do this. That's not going to work really well. It's just about starting and knowing that starting is the hardest part. Start with one step. Every single journey begins with one step. And so that can be really, really helpful to just go back to getting a reward. It could be a coffee. It could be a candle. It could be an outfit, anything that resonates with you. Again, it has to be personal because if you're someone who, at the end of this week, after this first full week of trying to do exercise 3 times a week in the morning, I'm going to treat myself to go out to dinner with friends on Friday and within moderation. So I keep honoring to my body and things like that. But you have something to look forward to reward yourself with, and not in an unhealthy way. Like, oh, I did this, so now I only deserve to eat. Like, I'm not saying that, just saying a positive reward. And it could be as small as iced coffee, through your day. And I work with moms, especially who, it's hard to get out or they have anxiety about getting out and about with small children. So that's what they like to do. They like to treat themselves to even a drive-through coffee while they're out. And that's a little something. So again, common humanity. Maybe if you see a mom out at the grocery store and she has a coffee, that's what's going on. We never know what's going on underneath the surface of someone else. And again, Lisa, great point. Say, okay, well, I'm going to start again now. Do some small exercise. And this is where put a timer on your phone for even 10 minutes, whether it's journaling or exercise or whatever it is that your goal is and you're trying to perform in and be productive in. You're never going to judge yourself into it. You're never going to shame yourself into reaching it. you could base it out of fear, but you're obeying out of fear. And it's only a matter of time till that collapses, till your body actually collapses. So looking at it that way of giving yourself a reward or talking to yourself like you would a friend, validating it. I see why you're nervous about this because you care. Let's start with one small step. Let's put 10 minutes on the timer. Already have it planned out. Don't try to put pressure on yourself to think, okay, now I'm at my home gym or I'm at the gym. What do I do now? Like, get a plan. Again, as humans, we do really well with plans and routines. Get a plan in place before you even go. Remove as many barriers as possible. So know that, okay, I'm just going to press play and watch this video, and I'm only going to do it for 10 minutes to start, but it's the act of starting and then adding to it that really gets me. Good. Yeah, remembering the feeling of how much better I felt engaging in those healthier behaviors. So true, whether it's eating or journaling or being around certain people, getting out of the house, exercise. We're holistically healthy beings. That's what we really want to gain for, not just physical. Again, we wouldn't just wait till every bone in our body broke to go to the doctor or the hospital. Just like in our mental health, we don't want to wait till everything collapses in our life to finally go get help. And although that was almost the view of therapy and mental health care years prior, I love that you're engaged in this because it doesn't have to be that way. We can see that we all experience this. This is common humanity. We all experience self-judgment, and we can borrow from each other to see what works and enact that compassion from other people onto ourselves. And again, it's just start again, start again. Yeah. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's true. Put inspirational quotes around on sticky notes. That can be such a great visual reminder for people. I love hearing what you're doing. Yeah, Paige says, getting a good night's sleep, I find helps me get back on track, making some sort of list or plan, or I get inspired by podcasts or videos. We need inspiration. This is so true. Judgment doesn't work. Inspiration does, though. And so that self-care can actually look like investment. It could look like grocery shopping. It could look like meal prep. It could look like listening to podcasts like this or watching certain YouTube videos because they make you feel good about yourself in a way that is healthy, that invests in your self-care and your overall well-being. And by doing that, those healthy behaviors, it's going to make you want to eat well or exercise. When we're usually doing one, we want to continue in the other. They're kind of like a fruit cup, although that there's oranges and maybe a cherry and pineapple, they kind of all go together too. So think of it that way. That's a pretty good picture. And from Sarah, I try to identify with the positive thing, like I love my body and I'm healthy. A healthy person goes to the gym and eats well. That makes me feel like I can do it. Yes, even some days I just say like, I'm kind of maybe the weird lady talking to herself, but thank you, legs. You walked me with my dog today. I took my dog for a walk. Thank you, legs. You can move, you're healthy, and I take care of you. I just acknowledge that. And that can be a perspective shift too, because not everybody has that. I've been in times in my life as an athlete where I've had surgeries or I couldn't even walk and I had to rehab. And it's that gratitude that really I have to go back to say, thank you, I could do this today. I moved my body. Even if that could be a great healthy goal to start. I just moved my body for 10 minutes. If it's cleaning, if it's folding laundry, if it's dancing, it doesn't have to be working out per se, but it's moving my body, and we shift that perspective again. What I'm learning from therapy is to pick one thing and focus on that in order to get back on track. Yes, Lexi, when we focus on too much all at once, that's overwhelming. We're like a deer in the headlights and you have too much on the brain. You don't know what to do, so you don't do anything. That's how I describe it all the time, is you have all these light bulbs going up and they're blinding. You don't know what to do, so you don't do anything. So pick one thing. And when we make changes in our life of trying to be less judgmental or critical, being more kind to ourselves, pick one of these that we talk about and try it this week. It doesn't have to be all of them, because again, that's way too much pressure, and it's just going to enact that self-critical self-talk, judgmental self-talk all the way back again. It's going to re-trigger it so quickly. So pick one thing, because we're human, and these are great examples to see what you could try. I would even encourage on these to take notes, and when somebody says something that you could read in the chat box, or you're reviewing this or going back and watching it or hearing me talk about it, add to it in your journal or the note section of your phone. And then you have some ammo. You have some tools in your toolbox. You don't wait while you're fixing a house, you don't wait to go and say, oh, wait, I don't have any of these tools. Actually, I have to go to Home Depot. You usually come prepared with a basic toolkit, and then you can get specialized things. But that's what we want. We want specialized for you, or personalized, I should say. But there's a lot of good tried and true common tools that we could use here, like common humanity. Oh, a candle. One person says that's a good one. One small thing, because I tend to go too big. Yes, Sophie, thank you. Because that's why I gave that example. If we backtrack, just walking down the street, we see that acquaintance, we say hi, they don't say anything. That enacts a negative self-talk or some judgmental talk. It shows that we're human. We're all human. We probably all have had that experience. And it's small experiences, it's everyday experiences. We don't have to go to the big ones to be the CEO or, the most liked person in the room, because then we're just chasing that. That doesn't fulfill us, really. That doesn't bring happiness. In fact, a lot of those people might be so motivated by self-judgment or that fear. But if we can go back to the common humanity, the common everyday, starting small, not too big, because then if it's too big, we won't start. That's a beautiful reminder, because the small stuff really counts. It's really the big stuff, actually. Lisa says to start identifying the barriers to those healthy behaviors and begin troubleshooting ways to make those behaviors easy again. So stacking the new behavior against another great habit. So what that could look like could maybe be, again, getting that meal prep. And then you have it all written out or printed out, or you follow a cookbook or a plan, and then you go shopping for that on Sunday and you prep it. So you're removing barriers. You don't have to think of everything on the spot. Oh no, it's Tuesday. What are we having for dinner? You already have it prepped for the week. You're removing barriers. Again, that's where the prevention is really key, like the sticky notes of inspirational quotes or mantras for the week, because it's not if something throws you off track or the judgment comes back, it's when it comes back. Because as humans, we have all these negative thoughts. And so you already have preventative measures in place. You can look at that visual example of that inspirational quote. You don't have to think of it on the spot, and you can go back to it. Or that list of past successes. That's a great one for that too. And I like, if you're kicking yourself, then stop right then and be kind to yourself. Right now, I'm going to make myself a smoothie. Perfect. Sometimes when we're in that spiral, it just like spirals down and down and down. So if we can break that cycle by calling a friend, getting out of our house, drinking water, those are great examples. Or again, writing out what we're saying to ourselves in our head onto a piece of paper. And when I do this, I go into high schools or organizations, and I usually start with something like this to show some common humanity of, I want you to write down a negative thought that you had this week, or even this morning or today. And I have these pieces of paper, and I pass around pens, and they write some out, and then they put them in the bowl and they pass them out to me. And I say, if you don't want me to read it out loud, just put an X, and I won't. I'll skip through it. And I usually go through and I read them all out. And depending on the size of the room, I'll do maybe 10 or 20, or just to see a sample size, again, to show that we're all human. And it's amazing how many people come up after and say, you know what, I did not write that one, but I think it all the time. I can't believe somebody else thinks that in this room, in the company that I work for, in the school that I attend, in the team that I play for, that they think it too. I had no idea, because we're all human. And I think that's a really powerful exercise. So just remember that too, that you aren't the only one experiencing it, even though you probably feel like you're the only one. And sometimes it's about talking about it with safe people, like a therapist or friends or like-minded people that are, again, safe, that can bring that common humanity into it, not say, oh, what's wrong with you? I've never thought like that, because that's not true. If we did a brain scan, they would be lying. So I just want to encourage you in that too. Tell one friend or family member what I plan to do to make me more likely to do it, like going for a walk. Yes. So if you want to get healthier in terms of mental health or physical health, having someone know about it, just the very act of speaking it aloud can make you feel like, oh, I said it, I have to do it. Or you can ask someone to hold you accountable too. That's again, someone safe who's not going to judge you into doing it, but encourage you into doing it, who's going to coach you rather than criticize you. Ooh, good question, Sophie. How do you distinguish between inspiration and comparison? Ooh, it's a slippery slope towards shame for me. Good one. Okay, so inspiration. I think, let's say social media, because that's a huge one. If you feel worse leaving than when you came on, that's comparison. That's the judgmental self talk coming in. And given maybe you're tired or you're hungry, you've just had a hard day, that can play into it too. That can absolutely play into your mood. So if you notice at 5 o'clock after work, you're just wiped, don't go on social media. If you're finding that judgmental voice come back in or that comparison come back in and it just is kind of icky and eats at you, don't do it then. Maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning before you start your day and you see an inspirational quote or a funny video, that's a good one. And so play around with the time of day, how your body's feeling. Like, are you just wiped from the day of work? Is this how you relax? Are you hungry? Are you ornery? I would not go on social media if you're into certain spaces, I should say, if you're feeling really down or judgmental of yourself, because it's easier then to find what you're looking for. We always find what we're looking for. So if I'm looking for ways that I'm not thin enough or smart enough or have a great enough life compared to someone else, I will so find that on social media because I'm looking for it. In fact, I'll find that anywhere I look around at people around me, in the news or movies, TV shows. I will find that because I that's the lens that I'm looking at. It's like I'm putting on glasses and I'm saying, this is what I'm looking for. So, but if I'm looking for ways to be inspired and asking, do I leave better than when I came on? And I feel inspired, like it's a great recipe. Okay, I'm not going to pick a whole week worth to do. I'm just going to pick one and I'm going to encourage myself to try it this week. And I'm going to pick, okay, I have a little bit more capacity on Wednesday. So I'm going to try it then. That would be inspiration versus comparison, but there's a lot of factors into it. But pay attention. Where are you feeling it in your body? What kind of thoughts are coming up? Do you feel judgmental towards yourself or anyone else? That's usually comparison. Comparison is a thief of joy, but inspiration encourages you to be better who you're created to be. You come alive, like it kind of have a little pep in your step. Oh, that recipe I'm going to follow, or that one exercise I'm going to try. Oh, that one thing I'm going to say to myself, or that mantra on that sticky note I can put and practice this week. Just one thing, just one thing. That could be a really good example. And I'd love to hear from anyone else too. What do you find as inspiration versus comparison in your world? It does not have to be social media related. It could be a quote or anything that you do, but what inspires you versus enacts a comparison and judgment. Ooh, we have a book recommendation. I'm all about resources and books, so feel free to send those into The Lazy Genius Way. Oh, is a book helping me identify barriers and start small. Sophie, thank you. Yes, that's amazing. Inspiration, maybe what makes your soul move to do something. It's a good feeling. Oh, yes, your soul is moved to do something. There's an action involved there. It's, oh, I'm inspired to write this down. I'm inspired to try journaling. I'm inspired to try counseling. I'm inspired to try exercise. I'm inspired to go out of my way to speak up at a meeting next time. So that will be some things that you're moved to do. Okay. And self-talk from Lisa, tell yourself F comparison. Yeah. Sometimes you do have to be kind of stern with yourself or use some humor. That can be huge too, of not self-deprecating humor or putting yourself down. But it's amazing what humor can bring to a situation. That stickiness of shame and heaviness of how we feel it in our body is like just deep and heavy. But laughter can really lighten that. And surely, yes, this will be available as a replay. So if things are resonating with you, go back and listen or go back and read the chat box. These are really, really helpful tools to try that. Okay, so we will move on. I'm going to walk through one of the exercises from, speaking of resources, our day 10 from the self-love journal. So we're going to use that of an example of how people can use common humanity to overcome challenges. So we're going to work through this. Feel free to interact and ask. I'm just going to ask, hey, do you resonate with this? So I want you to be thinking of this in your real life when I'm reading it. So I'll give the overview, then I'll ask you some questions. Feel free to type in the chat box, interact, share your experiences. So on day 10 of our self-love journal, it's called Embracing Common Humanity. According to self-compassion experts, again, I love Dr. Neff's, feeling isolated and feeling a sense of common humanity are opposing forces. So often when we experience judgment or shame, we feel like we're alone, we're isolated, then it feels more real. When we're experiencing self-judgment and we come into common humanity, we feel validated and seen and realize we're not alone and we're loved and we're worthy. When we feel isolated, we feel like we're the only ones who make mistakes. This feeling can cause us to magnify the shame, guilt, or inadequacy that we all feel. Does anyone resonate there? When we feel isolated, we feel like we're the only ones who makes mistakes. This feeling can cause us to magnify the shame, guilt, inadequacy that we feel. So when I read that, we all feel shame, we all feel guilt, we all feel inadequate at some point in our life. And that's exasperated or magnified when we're isolated and believe we're the only ones who feel this way. I wonder if you can relate. So let's look at our daily intention then. Is there something you've done recently that made you feel a sense of shame, guilt, or inadequacy? So when it's recent, sometimes it still stings and we can feel it. Where do you feel it in your body? What would that look like? Would it look red, purple? What kind of texture would it be? Sometimes that helps to think of it that way too. So a recent time that it made you feel that you felt shame, guilt, or inadequate. Are there times in your life when you felt you were the only one who has messed up? I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one that did this. I'm the only one who could have failed this miserably. Anybody in this situation would have done it better. They wouldn't have screwed up like I did. Have you ever felt like you're the only one? Reflect on how viewing things through the lens of a common humanity might change how you feel about yourself. I'm human. Everybody makes some mistakes from time to time. I'm doing the best I can. What can I learn from this? Who can I go to talk to encourage me and coach me, not criticize me? Those can be some good questions to think about too. So again, when we're isolated, those feelings of shame, guilt, inadequacy really feel more believable. So I'd love to hear your experience. What's recent time that maybe you felt shame, guilt, or inadequate? Are there any times? Sure. So again, is there something recently that you've done that made you feel a sense of shame, guilt, or inadequacy? Or are there times in your life when you felt you were the only one who has messed up? I'm hearing one person say, yes, I feel like when I feel lazy, I think I'm the only person in the world not doing something productive. Another person says same, which ironically we've talked about a lot today. And that lazy looks different in other ways, whether it's exercise or getting up early or journaling. And again, someone earlier said, when it's easy tasks, it's simple, but it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And then how can we bring that common humanity to it? How can we reflect on how viewing things through the lens of common humanity change how we feel about ourselves? Well, I think just seeing that other people feel this way, they struggle with it too. You're not alone. It's not just you. There's not something wrong with you. You're not defective. It's weirdly simple, but it's so easy to forget that others go through things similar to us. So true. And it's amazing even that phrase, remember in the darkness what you learned in the light, that we forget what we go through. It's this amnesia. And so if we can have a journal or go back to or have those go-to successes or quotes or mantras that we can utilize, those can be really helpful. Amanda says, not being able to get to the gym because life with a baby is busy. Yes. So we feel like we're the only ones, or we just feel that shame, that guilt, inadequacy. Again, if we can move our body or go for a walk or reach out to a friend in a similar season of life or who's been there, I bet we'll all say, me too. I felt that way too. Yeah. Binge eating, absolutely. That's associated with shame and guilt and inadequacy. That's when I let the comparison thoughts run. Yes. Yeah. Another one says same. So you're not alone in the binge eating. Yes. Also, just remembering you don't know someone's whole story. Maybe them not reacting to you how you expect has nothing to do with you at all. Yeah. That's back to that passerby example on the street. Hi, maybe that person just got the worst news of their life and they were just in a fog and they didn't even see you. So sometimes that is a possibility. We don't always know. And especially social media, we compare our regular mundane life or negatives of life to someone else's highlight reel. We compare our insides. We only know our thoughts, our judgmental thoughts. We think we're alone, our shame, our guilt, our inadequacy. We can compare our inside to someone else's outside. And we only see a very specialized little glimpse of a story that they want us to see. And I wonder if we approach things as, I wonder what happened to them to make them get here. Let's say that you're working with a really tough boss who is really judgmental and critical and thinks that by shaming you, it will actually increase your productivity or performance. I wonder, get curious. Get curious. It's a great mantra. Get curious about others and yourself, not judgmental, but curious. That will bring some common humanity to it. I wonder what happened to get them there. What happened in their life to make them this way? Again, not in a judgmental way, but in a curious way. Wow, they were really shamed as a child. Oh, they always felt inadequate. So they're striving and striving and striving. When is it enough? That's the problem. When is it enough? Feeling guilty for not being the best when maybe I actually do need to nap. Absolutely. This is a big one in our culture of busy, do. I just need to rest. Like schedule it in Sunday afternoon, recharge, rest. These are important productive habits. If we recharge, we actually come back stronger. Plus, we're pausing to care for ourselves to show that we matter. And if you have children, that's a beautiful example to set for them that you're worthy of rest, that you don't have to earn your worth or your performance by being productive. Curious, not furious. Oh, I like that. Get curious, not furious. I like that. Yep, most happy people aren't mean to others. Very true. Yeah, but we're not always going to be happy, and that's okay. We're going to have moments of judgment on towards ourselves or moments of shame. We're going to have moments of guilt and feeling inadequate, but those can be moments. They don't have to be defining factors. So I would encourage you to reach out to people who are your go-to supportive people to help you bridge that common humanity of, hey, I feel that too. It's amazing hearing those words, me too, or I think I know how you may be feeling. I felt like this a time in my life can be so powerful. Scars can be so powerful. They show that something tried to kill you or destroy you, and it didn't, that you won, that you survived. And out of our deepest wounds come our most effective impact because we get it. It can be someone else's survival guide. So when someone that you know in your world opens up to you, if they do, or be that safe place, try to create that safe space that they could open up to, that's giving common humanity to say, I see you. I felt that way before too. I just want to let you know you're not alone. Sometimes that's all you can say. You don't know what else to say, but I just want you to know you're not alone. Yes. Resting is looked down on. Or was this how I was raised? I think in our culture, it totally is. It is looked down on as we're lazy. Lazy has come up quite a bit when we've chatted, whether it's rest or exercise or work or any of that. But it's not. Like our phones, we would not just assume that they would always be working all the time and we'll always be on them doing a million things and never have to charge them. Or sometimes you can still charge them and they're glitchy and you need to do the old on off, the old reboot, or your computer. You wouldn't have a million tabs open at once because it would be so slow. You want to take what in your life can I exit out? What tabs can I exit out in my life? And maybe that's a judgmental way of talking. And it's not all of them all at once, but it's slowly exiting them out so you can think straight. And maybe right now it's just paying attention to when you use judgmental words like should, never, always, or things that make you feel shame or guilt or inadequate. Writing it out, that's very powerful. So get your journal, write it out. Sometimes just doing that gives a new, fresh perspective. And that can be really, really helpful too, just to start to move towards that more common humanity type approach and more self-compassion, a more balanced way of thinking. Again, all of these examples, they're not going from judgment to rainbows and butterflies. We would never believe that. It's just a more balanced way of thinking, of saying, hey, we're human. Everybody feels this way from time to time. You're not alone. That's actually what really helps quench those hurts. Not, you're the best ever, life skittles, rainbows and butterflies. That doesn't help. Nobody would really believe that. There's no truth. There's no weight. There's no backing behind that. So I do want to take the pressure off of you there, that it doesn't have to go from negative to super positive self-talk. Although positive self-talk has a time and place, we really just want more of that balanced way of talking to someone, of love and validation and self-respect. I find it helpful to use curious, not furious with myself when I am frustrated that I might not be doing what I should. Why am I not following through? I love that, Lisa. It's such a good reminder. I think when we can have something tangible of just a saying, a rhyme that we can say to ourselves, curious, not furious, it just helps us remember, because it's so hard to do it in the moment. So again, remember in the darkness what you learned in light. When you're practicing, write it out. Put a reminder in your phone, put it in the notes section of your phone so that you could go back. You don't have to think of it in the moment when you're flooded. It's so hard, as we talked about today, to think of that, but you could go back and just get curious. Okay, what was going on in my life to make me talk that way to myself? I was feeling I was really at capacity. I was spread thin. I was doing all these different assignments for work. I had no downtime in my schedule. I didn't get to exercise in a whole week. I haven't been eating that well. I haven't been sleeping that well. Oh, no wonder I've been feeling so down. And I've been really judgmental to myself, or I've been feeling more moments of shame and guilt and feeling of inadequate. Those factors can play a part. Then when we can identify those, we can pull backwards, we can scale back and say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I have some snacks this week. I'm going to make sure that I go to bed earlier and skip that second show of Netflix so that I go to bed earlier so I can wake up earlier, have a better sleep. And when we start to care for ourselves and show that we're deserving of love, well, then that's often when the judgment, shame, guilt, feelings of inadequacy start to melt a little bit. Yes, love that. What tabs can I exit out of? That can sometimes be a good visual too, of just like, okay, I'm just going to exit this one thing right now. Yeah. Oh, thank you for doing this for us. It's a really kind thing, and being around a compassionate person helps. Yes. I love this space because, as we can see, what a better thread of common humanity than people from all over coming in and saying, hey, I feel this too. Not everyone's in the same walk of life, place, setting, season of life, job, status, male, female. We have such an array, and that's the beauty. And I hope that you can see today that this really is common humanity fighting self-judgment. And that's honestly one of the best ways to do it, is because when we can bring some common humanity and compassion, we really open up beautiful floodgates for wholehearted living, as Brene Brown says. So I want to open it up after we've done this prompt. Again, the self-love journal, you can find it on our website, Switch Research. Does anyone have any questions or any comments to close on today? Yes, thank you. It's so nice to have a space to explore these ideas with others trying to do the same. Yes, we're all in the same boat. And here we are fighting against those feelings of isolation, or I'm the only one going through this. And you don't have to show up at your local support group or start a conversation with someone at school drop off or pickup. Always, sometimes you can, but you can find these spaces even online, which at the comfort of your own home is still private. It's so beautiful to still breathe that common humanity. So thank you all for coming. And yes, this will happen every Monday. So at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll go through these different topics. I'm so excited. If there's certain topics you guys want to hear about, feel free to email in media@switchresearch.org, and I'll be sure to teach on some, bring some good examples and exercises. And we just want to create this beautiful space because, as we can see, we all are in this together. We all experience these things. Nothing is wrong with you. And I bet throughout this whole time together, when you were hearing me read or you were reading in the chat box what other people are struggling with, I bet you didn't think, wow, what's wrong with them? They're so defective, or they're the only one who's ever experienced that. I bet you thought, oh, me too. Oh, I felt that way before too. Wow, they're so brave for speaking up and sharing that. And in fact, our vulnerability often looks like bravery when we share it with the right people. And so thank you for showing that common humanity. Yes, so grateful for this space. Me too. Me too. That's amazing. And oh, someone just logged on. And if you missed it, no problem at all. These will be recorded. You can go back and watch at any time too on our YouTube page. Yes, love the journal. Avoiding isolation is key. Yes, there's a recording. Perfect. Will be posted later for you. Great. Well, you all are so wonderful. Thank you for coming on. And I can tell you, as a therapist, as a human, I experience these things too. So if therapists, the people who have it all together, wink, wink, who professionally are supposed to know these things, experience these things, and these types of feelings of shame and guilt and inadequacy, and I'm the only one, then I think we all do. And I just want to give you permission that you can have these thoughts, but they're just thoughts. It doesn't mean they're true. You can have these feelings, but they're not fact. And so when we can bring a more balanced perspective, not rainbows and butterflies, but more balanced perspective, and we come out of isolation with safe people, not everybody, but safe people, that's when the shame, the guilt, the inadequacy really starts to melt off. The judgment, the self-critical talk really starts to melt off. And we can really see that connection of common humanity. So thank you all for coming on. Oh, I'm so glad. I really needed this today. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Me too. Me too. And so thank you so much for coming on. You all are just so lovely. I love this space. Thank you for advocating for your mental health. This is a ripple effect. This is really beautiful. Oh, okay. Another question. How to take criticism from another person when you're already being so hard on yourself already? How do you tell someone kindly that tough love is not your thing? I think having good boundaries, and that could be one that we even do, that assertive type communication of, I appreciate your feedback. Right now is not the time to share that. I am going through a lot, but I appreciate your feedback. Or you can just say something, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you. It depends what that relationship would be. If it's a boss, don't talk to me that way. It may not work. But so it would kind of depend on the relationship. But I think of finding ways to politely but respectfully honor your boundaries and to say what you need in a way that's honoring to you. Still respectful, but yeah, tough love really doesn't, sometimes works, but shame never works. You're never going to shame someone into really doing it long term. You could shame someone into obedience, but it's not going to last long. It's going to cause a lot of anxiety and tension, and it's an insecure attachment relationship. But that's a whole other thing that we can get into. Yeah, so you guys will get email reminders but it's every Monday. Put a little reminder on in your phone. You'll get some email reminders if you hit subscribe to, and we can unpack some of these because these are all really good topics. And again, the takeaway is you're not alone. As you can see, we talked a lot of examples today that I think you can resonate with, and know that you're not alone and you're worthy of love, and common humanity is a real thing. So thank you for joining us.